some places had a lot of youth, some places did not.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the audience may be familiar with churches where there's a lot of older people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are other churches that are super vibrant and everybody wants to go there. Well, there was no option. So going to those places that they weren't maybe that many youth and putting your talents for God, that kind of really like inspired
Mm-hmm.
that love and desire to serve and create something for the youth, that the little youth that were there,
Mm-hmm.
or I find a way to attract the ones that weren't there as well. So kind of finding different creative ways to bring people together for the same purpose, the same mission.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're meeting Ruth, this young lady that is extremely inspiring. Raised in a Christian family with a pastor as a father, and taking all of this that she learned since childhood to be the leader that she is today. A truly inspiring story. Welcome to Tea Talks. Ruth, I am so excited that you're here. I met you just a couple months ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you invited me to come to your church, and then I get there and I see this power of women just going around and organizing, and I mean, impressive. I was so happy to meet you, and I'm so excited that you accepted to be part of our little podcast.
Of course,
So
my pleasure,
welcome.
for sure.
I am so glad you're here.
Awesome.
Let's start with you.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about your background.
So my name is Ruth, like you mentioned. I am a pastor's daughter. So I grew up, since birth, I've been in church, just growing up in different churches, switching churches every 2-3 years, just learning to be adaptable and growing as we went through different locations, and grew up in Cuba. So I was there till about 11. And then,
I didn't know you were from Cuba.
so I grew up there and then migrated to the States when I was 11. So the whole shift of language barrier and new culture, all that hit really early on. But now as I'm here in the States, you know, the one thing that kind of threaded everything together was faith. So just kind of bringing in and growing, and that has kind of carried me through, and now now in South Carolina.
How was it growing up as a pastor's kid?
So pastors, there's a lot of pressure when you're a pastor's kid. You have two sides of pastor's kids, right? You have the one pastor kid that decides to completely go off the racks and go and do the worst thing.
Be wild.
Be wild. And then there's the other pastor's kid that take it and make it their mission in their life. And for me growing up, I was able to kind of take the good things of being a pastor's kid, although there was a lot of pressures and expectations with it. But, growing up, I was able to be put in situations where I could learn and, start developing my leadership skills since I was really young. So a lot of the churches that we would go to, or my dad was a pastor at, were smaller churches.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenges with being in a small church typically is that there's not a lot of people, or people miss, or there, those issues that you can see often. And so being there all the time, you were in a way expected to take over those spots. So the good thing about that, though, was that from a very young age, I was very put into this leading roles, despite not knowing how to do it, but kind of observing what my parents were doing and what people around me were doing, is kind of taking and learning from there. And that's kind of where I started learning a little bit from. Yeah.
Did the moving around, how did you feel about that while you were growing up? Not now, but while you were growing up.
When I was younger, it was a little harder because you would make connections in different locations, and then you would move away.
Yes.
And those connections were lost because technology as we see it today was not available.
Wasn't like that before.
At all. So phone calls, cell phones, was all new to me once I came to the States. But the one thing that I did learn from being able to move every so often was being adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
So take whatever your place you're at, make it home, connect with as many people as you can, just kind of grow and learn from that. So it, although it was hard, it was always cool and neat to find a new adventure and a new place to kind of explore and learn.
Yeah, my kids, they hated all of the moving around. Even though I'm only a pastor for the past 6 years, but I moved around because of other reasons. Being like first generation immigrant, you go where the work is,
Exactly.
and my kids hated moving around. As an adult, now they realize, wow, I am so much more understandable of people, and I adapt so much easier because of that. I still think it's nice to grow up and with the same friends and all of that, but
Yeah,
we have
for
to look at the positive everywhere.
Of course, for sure.
You already mentioned a few things that I kind of can imagine the answer for this question, but what happened throughout your childhood, growing up, and all of that, that inspired you to, that shaped the way that you serve, that you do ministry today?
So, kind of back to what I mentioned of growing up in smaller churches, some places had a lot of youth, some places did not. So, a lot of the audience may be familiar with churches where there's a lot of older people, right? And there are other churches that are super vibrant and everybody wants to go there. Well, there was no option. So going to those places that they weren't maybe that many youth and putting your talents for God, that kind of really like inspired that love and desire to serve and create something for the youth, that the little youth that were there, or I find a way to attract the ones that weren't there as well. So kind of finding different creative ways to bring people together for the same purpose, the same mission.
Sure. That is great. How old were you when you came from Cuba?
So I was 11. I was really young.
Oh, so you were very young. Do you remember the church from there?
There was multiple. Like I said, we moved a lot. So I would say the biggest one that I can recall was probably the last couple of years before we moved there. And the church that we were at, we lived basically on the church premises. So it was like a house church attachment. And so we were constantly there. People were constantly in our home. But it wasn't only, oh, let's come and play. There was always this mentality from our parents. Okay, you're going to play, but how are you going to tell them about God? So there's always this like way that you have to like process things, that you're not only playing or leaving it there for like.
It's always with evangelistic mind.
Exactly.
Which is purposeful. It's a good thing. It's a very good thing. But it can be a pressure for a kid too, you know, because sometimes you just want to relax and play.
For sure.
Did you feel a big difference between the church there and the church here?
There's a big culture shift.
Yeah.
And especially having parents that were pastors in a different country, and then trying to bring that here was very different. And at least as I was a teenager, I felt the church culture shock a lot more, because here teenagers and young people were doing some things that in a different country would have been a little bit different.
Yes.
And as I'm growing and experiencing things, I'm ready. I want to experience everything. I want to be part of it. But my parents are more hesitant just because they don't know the culture. They don't understand. And in many cases, technology was a big like aspect of it. Oh, how do you implement technology now? And how can you use it for God in this case? Or how you not use it for God? And so that was a big shift. Not only technology, but the books and everything that was new just kept on piling in. It was not only a learning experience for me, but also for my parents, because they were trying to like understand the difference in culture as well.
Yeah. Was there ever like a pivotal moment for you that turned, like, that made your spiritual growth stronger, closer with God?
So I would say I've always wanted to participate, but once I went to high school, I still had the desire to be a leader. I just didn't know how to connect with the culture as much. And it was hard because I wanted to be a leader so bad. Like, you spend 4 years in college, you're like, I want to be a leader here, I want to be a leader there. But I felt like it was that transitioning that I was still going through. So once I made it to college and the language barrier wasn't an issue anymore, I felt like I could fully use my leadership skills, I started getting involved. That was like a turn switch. I was like, I'm going to college. I'm a new person. I'm going to experience all these leaderships. No, I don't know where, but I'm going to find them. So as I
you were a leader since you're a little kid.
well, kind of. I mean, I was shy, but I still, I was thrown in there and I was put in the spot. But as I went into college and I started with like freshmen, just starting a simple little ministry. It was something really little that we would meet once a week, and that was really simple. But then, like the second semester, we came in, and we were invited to be part of this. It was called a hands ministry at that time, and our ministry was super simple. All we had to do, it was come in when people like doing church services, pray for them at the entrance of the church service. Really simple, but as people noticed that I was getting involved, I was called by one of the youth directors, and he was like, "Hey, how about participating in our ministry?" And I was like, "Well, let's do it. How about that?" And so I went in, and I saw like those world and windows like all opened up, full of opportunities for leadership, and I realized that although I wanted to serve so badly, not everyone had the same mentality or the desire at all. Mm-hmm. So I went in and I started finding an opportunity there. That one opened up and led to a different one and a different one. So like as part of the youth program ministry, I started in as just designing flyers, just something simple. And I kind of learned on the spot because I knew nothing about design. As an 18-year-old, I had no experience a lot with the technology, but I was getting my hands dirty. I was getting in there, and I learned as much as I could. I was like a little sponge. Well, this leader has this, I'm going to learn that from them. Well, this leader has this, I'm going to learn that from them.
That's perfect.
So I started growing, and that was kind of like the big moment that I was like, okay, we're going to make the switch. We're going to make it happen.
That is awesome. Mm-hmm. So now you're a young adult. Mm-hmm. What are the challenges that you face still today or in the past mm-hmm. to be able to serve in the church as a young adult?
So the biggest challenge, I would say, is finding support. Although there's a lot of people in churches nowadays, we see a lot of people also that just sit. They're just there. They're bench warmers, basically. And as I started experimenting with different leadership roles, I realized that not everyone is going to be there constantly, but the people that are there will be the greatest supporter. So as I worked through media team in college and led out the like broadcasting church services, I was able to find a couple of people that were always there. So I wasn't alone. There was always that support, and those people made it worthwhile. And then now, as I step after college, as I'm leading the youth ministry, I always find a couple of people that are always like, "Hey, what do you need? What do we have to do? What's the next thing? What's the thing?" So they're always there to support, not necessarily them being leaders, but they love supporting. So every leader needs to have people around them that would create that support. Yes. Is the only way they can stand up. So yes. That has been kind of my biggest challenge. But then at the same time, I've identified the right people mm-hmm. to be able to connect in.
Yeah, actually, I was reading a research. This is for pastors, but it's exactly the same what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. That for a long time, this pastor always thought that he needed to, how he's going to motivate 100% of the church to do the work. And mm-hmm. then, because usually 95% sit, 5% work, mm-hmm. right? And he was like, how do I get this 95% engaged, until he finally realized, no, this is never going to happen. Mm-hmm. Instead of putting all of my energy in 95% that will never do it, I'm going to put my energy in the 5% that are willing to do it, because training those 5%, they are interested, they enjoy. It's going to do so much more than wasting my energy on the 95% that will not do the work.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Right?
That is awesome.
So that took like a really heavy burden mm-hmm. from my back, because I was like, I'm not doing my job right. Why are these people not encouraged? And then I realized they will not be. Mm-hmm. Let me focus on the ones that want to do it. And basically, you're already doing mm-hmm. that. So Loved it.
And then oftentimes that same 5% will then become your leaders and will encourage another 5%.
Yep.
So that just opens up your
Yeah, you're never gonna have
window.
100% at the church. Be okay with that. Work with those who wants to work with you. That's my philosophy now.
That's amazing.
The way you're talking, it seems like you never had any doubts about God or anything like that. Did you ever had like those moments that you start questioning, I don't know if I need church, I don't know if I believe in God? Did you ever had those moments?
Oh, for sure. I think everyone has that. And I think is a very important part of every growing Christian. So when I was, going through high school first and then college, a lot of those, like, not necessarily believe in God, but like, do I really want to stay in church mentality? Like, okay, everyone believes in God, but do I really want to stay in church? Is this what is going to help me grow as a person? So I had a really neat experience when I was in 8th grade. And it was a big transition year for me. And I had a dream, and in this dream, and it was really short, but in this dream, God told me, hey, stay connected with me, stay in church. And so every time I had those doubts when I was in high school, when I went to college, and even though I was in a Christian school, because this is in Christian schools, you still have those doubts. Those doubts are normal. Like, you need to have that as part of your growing experience. I went back to that dream. Okay, well, I heard God's voice talking to me. I have this doubt. What does it mean? Okay, well, why do I not want to stay in church today? Or why do I not want to go to church? There has to be a reason. So kind of that has been kind of what has led me to self-analyze my why. Okay, why do I become a leader? What's pushing me? What's motivating me? And I think not only now, but as I continue to grow and mature, that potentially is going to be something that can help me maintain myself in church and connecting with God, not only in church, but having that relationship with God and growing in my faith and spirituality.
I love that you had a dream. I always wanted to have a dream. I never had those kind of dreams. It kind of bothers me. How about mentorship? How important was that for your development?
So because I grew up with Christian parents or that were pastors, people kind of expected me to know things. So on the downside of that is that, well, I kind of had to observe and learn. So I did not have a lot of, per se, mentors that came up to me and told me, hey, you can do it like this. Just a couple of people here and there that I could learn from as I grew up. So back to, in my teen years, it was a little complicated because that's when you have your division between your parents and just you're growing and
your own faith.
You're in your own faith. And so as I was growing in my own faith, in a different country, I had someone in this case, she was my boss, a lot older than me, that to me she was like a mentor. Not necessarily in the faith aspect, but in the acceptance aspect. As I was growing and like dealing through all these different things in a Christian school, trying to figure this out, she just accepted how I was at that moment. And she was like, oh, well, come to my house, I'll feed you. Or, oh, let's do this project at my place. So in a way, she mentored me in the sense of different things, or even teaching me how to cook, right? So she taught me in different areas where I could grow and accept me the way I was, even within my faith. Now, as I went to college, then I was able to be exposed to more people. I was not as known as a pastor's kid anymore. I actually did not mention I was pastor's kid for the longest time. Although my parents were in the same location, but I just kind of made a division there. I was like, okay, how can I figure this out without people knowing that I'm a pastor's kid, right? And then as I grew into that phase, I learned, oh man, I like what that person has. Well, I like what that person has. And so I started kind of getting closer to those people and learning from them. So when I was in college, I had a girl that was probably 2 years older than me. And like I mentioned earlier, I started kind of learning design. I knew nothing about it, but she knew a little bit more than I did. So I kind of started learning from her, and she would teach me how to do this here and there. And then I would go on my own and then practice and do that. And then what I was learning, and I was applying it to the ministry. And so it was like learn, get feedback, apply, learn, feedback, and apply. And so I kind of did that rinse and repeat in different areas.
Got it.
And then what I didn't have as mentors, I observed. Well, how are they doing that? How can I implement that? Or how can I change? So that's kind of how overall mentors have impacted me.
And you're very self-motivated. Like you went after, I want to learn about this, so let me get close to somebody that did this. How important it is for those young people that are in the church, but they don't have a mentor. How do you think mentorship is important for the kids that are not as self-motivated as you are?
So the big thing of growing is that you have to have a little bit of self-motivation, at least a little bit, if you have a young person that has no motivation, sometimes it's harder.
It is.
It's really hard. But the only way that I've found it to be more effective is through finding peers that are motivated and then getting them to do things together. So once they start doing things together, they get a tiny little motivation. And then after they get a little bit of motivation, you're like, oh, well, who's somebody older that I can pair them up with that can kind of get them into that? And you can see how they can start blossoming and opening up slowly and surely. Sometimes it's putting them in something that they've never done before. So I really enjoy finding different people in the church and that, or especially the youth, right? That, that I can think of, how can I get you involved?
Exactly.
So this past weekend, there has been a young man that just recently came to our church. I literally just tapped him in the shoulder and asked him, hey, how about getting involved? What do you think about this? He's like, I don't know, maybe? So they're learning. When youth are like really young, they're learning. Yeah. They're growing, and they'll be shy. They're shy, and so it's okay to not have that motivation at first, but just giving them a chance. Yeah. I think just putting it out there, not expecting them to be perfect, but just giving them a chance to do something different, even if it's not perfect.
And I think that's exactly what you're doing right now. Right now, you're like, I'm looking for who is this people that I can get involved. And I think the role of a mentor, it's exactly that. It's like to be paying attention. Let's say a role of a leader is to pay attention, see the different qualities in people. There's people that are good at mentoring. There's people that shouldn't be a mentor.
For sure.
There are those more shy kids that may not really be looking for and obvious that they want to lead, but with somebody that can read personalities, they would be able to say, and hey, let me connect you here or there, and so on. For that person who wants to lead, but hasn't found their space yet or their opportunity yet, what is it the advice that you give?
So a lot of the times what I do in the youth ministry is exposure. Whether it's through creating programs or bringing ideas, is an exposure experiment, I call it, especially when they're young. When you're young, you can afford to make mistakes.
Yes.
Okay? So
I would expect them when you're older too.
It's a lot easier when you're younger.
It is.
People don't judge you as much.
Exactly.
So if someone is interested in leading for God, but they don't know how, try as many ministries as you can. Try it for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and see how you develop in that area. Some people do fantastic with kids. Other people do fantastic with youth. And so if you have any slight little like to a specific ministry, try it out. See what it's like. Is it something that helps me grow closer to God? Is it something that I enjoy doing? Because part of being in ministry is also, do you enjoy it? So being able to kind of not necessarily jump around, but in being able to test different ministries or help out in different activities that different ministries are doing may spark that seed of where God wants you to lead, for sure.
Yeah, it's like, okay, oh, I tried to do greeting, but I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't do greeting. Try something else. There's so many different things that a person can do.
Mm-hmm.
How about for the churches? What do you think churches can do to help more people want to become mentors?
Okay. I did something really interesting. Last year was our pilot year, and then this was this kind of the official year we done it. Is every time a person graduates, whether it's high school or college, we assign them a mentor from our church family.
That's nice.
And that mentor kind of follows up with them at least once a month, prays with them, just seeing how they are, whether they open up or not, but just having that space to reach out. And then from that, they have a whole year to help them kind of connect, invite them into activities and things like that. I call that like the very basic face of mentorship. It's not very complicated, does not require a lot of time, but it gives you an idea how to help somebody stay in church. I believe that a lot of the time, youth and young adults leave the church because they don't find any connections to come in.
Yes, absolutely.
So that has been like a big goal of mine. Now, how we pair them together is a lot of the time based on, is there any connection between them? Is there any personality similarities? Or are they in similar like work fields that we can kind of pair them and help them with? Because a lot of the times when there's something in common, then it's a lot easier to keep that mentorship growing. Now, although not all mentorships are ideal, it's very important to expose someone to be a mentor. Once they see it the first time, when they try it the first time, then it's easier to do it again. Okay? And then once you identify those successful mentors, you can have them kind of rinse and repeat.
I loved it.
Yeah, it's a new concept that we're trying, for sure.
You know, you're a little pastor, right? I love this. This was great. Talking to you, your ideas, the initiatives that you guys are doing there, it's inspiring. I really appreciate that you came to our podcast.
Of course.
And I appreciate you and everything that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invite.
It was great. Thank you.
That's awesome.